DNA sample, germ cell, to produce the species? Are they able to be reintroduced into the world? Are the inhabitants where they live available? And do we know why they went extinct in the first place? And even with this criteria, this still leaves plenty of other animals on the table. The list of candidates is actually pretty long, considering. There's an important thing that they said here that we need to take note of. They said, do we have access to tissue that could give us a good quality DNA samples or germ cells to reproduce the species? So it doesn't just have to be a DNA sample. They say good quality DNA samples or germ cells. And this is going to be important as we go through this discussion, because the germline can also structure or restructure DNA. This is going to be critical in this discussion. All right, so here's a good quality question. When it comes to these signs and numbers that I believe we are right on the cusp of seeing, time prophecy has been coming to pass so fast, so fast. I think we could see this in our lifetime. And I read an article recently that said that technology is advancing so fast that man is not really able to keep up with the proper use of this new technology. Remember, it says in the book of Daniel that knowledge will increase, that all of these things, including knowledge increasing, are just birth pangs. Well, what happens with birth pangs? They get stronger and more frequent. Our technology is advancing at breakneck speed, right along with end-time prophecy, with every other end-time prophecy. So scientists, now check this out, scientists have found alien genes in human DNA, extraterrestrial abilities, and a mystery in the DNA profile. Now, this is an article that I wanted to share with you, because what they're talking about, when they say alien, it means alien. Well, they're trying to pass it off as alien extraterrestrial beings from another planet who are different and separate from us. And you see, as we go through this thing, they try to pass it off as, they throw their own opinion in here with their scientific research and present it like it's scientific, even though it's not. It's just their opinion. So we're going to try to weed through this and just keep in mind that the only alien DNA out there is this NEPHILIM gene. Okay, now let me say again before we start this. We're not inserting the elusive Oompa Loompas, all right? We already know from the Bible, if you believe that that our instruction manual is factual, that this actually happened. This NEPHILIM gene exists, same as it existed before the flood, just in a little bit different form, but it's inside all of us. And when this article from these scientists start talking about this junk DNA that they say is extraterrestrial, yeah, it's extraterrestrial. It's the NEPHILIM gene that comes from the terrestrial, not celestial, beings that mated with women in the Old Testament before the time of the flood, and that gene is carried over to now. It's just they're trying to call it something else, but we know what it is. So let me share this with you, exactly what they're saying about this. And don't forget, after we talk about this, we're going to talk about these super diseases and this genetically modified food, the depopulation agenda. That's coming up, so don't go away. All right, this is from these scientists who say that they've discovered extraterrestrial genes in human DNA, all human DNA. Let me make this something else clear before we start this. If before the flood, if they were able to do DNA tests then, course, today they're not testing every single person. They're doing the standard testing where you take a group of people and you test DNA from that group, and then from this group, then from that group. Well, remember, before the flood, virtually everyone was infected with this NEPHILIM DNA except Noah and his sons. So if they were testing before the flood for DNA, they would have came out and said, every human has it. Because they could have tested every human except Noah and his sons, and that would have been a valid result. But had they tested or been able to test Noah and his sons, they would have seen it was not in every single human being. Even with today's technology, they're saying with certainty that this junk DNA is in every human being. But they're not testing every single human being. So I'm going to assume with relative certainty that there are people out here who do not have this gene in them. Because you have to assume that, because they're not testing every single person. But there's a group of researchers who's working at the Human Genome Project who say that they made an astonishing scientific discovery. They believe a so-called 97% non-coding sequence in human DNA is no less than genetic code of extraterrestrial life forms. They are calling these the Greys or the Talls or the whatever you want to call them. We know what this is, though. So let's keep that in mind as we go through this. These non-coding sequences are common to all living organisms on Earth. Now, you remember when God told Moses that he had to go in and cleanse the city, go into Canaan and cleanse the city before they could go in and take possession of the land that he promised them. What did he tell them? He said, you need to destroy every man, woman, child, and beast in the entire city to cleanse it. Because apparently, if it was only subject to the human beings, if it was only subject to the men, women, and children, then why did he have them kill all the beasts? Because these beasts were also infected with it. Because he told them to kill every living thing in there, to cleanse this city of this corrupt DNA. So when scientists come out today and confirm that very thing, this non-coding sequence are coming to all living organisms on Earth. From moles to fish to humans. In human DNA, they constitute a larger part of the total genome, says Professor Sam Chang, the group's leader. Non-coding sequences, originally known as junk DNA, were discovered years ago, and their function remains a mystery. It's a mystery to them, not to us. We have the instruction manual. But to them, this remains a mystery. They say the overwhelming majority of human DNA is off-world, quote-unquote, off-world in origin. The apparent, and they admit that this is apparent, extraterrestrial junk genes merely enjoy the ride, with hard-working active genes passed from generation to generation. What happened with the NEPHILIM gene? It was passed from generation to generation, and is still passed in those generations today. They say after a comprehensive analysis with the assistance of their scientists, computer programmers, mathematicians, and other learned scholars, Professor Chang had wondered if the apparently junk human DNA was created by some kind of extraterrestrial programmer. Ooh. The alien chunks within human DNA, Professor Chang further observes, have its own veins, arteries, its own immune system that vigorously resist all our anti-cancer drugs. It resists all of our anti-cancer drugs. In other words, this is DNA that works against the original creation. Do you remember when we talked about the NEPHILIM DNA? that it was against God in all that it did, in all forms. This Nephilim DNA was created to go against God. Well, they say that this is the same thing. It works against all of their anti-cancer drugs. Professor Chang stipulates our hypothesis is that a higher extraterrestrial life form was engaged in creating new life and planting it on various planets. Earth is just one of them, perhaps. See, this is where there's an opinion in there. After programming, our creators grow us the same way they grow bacteria in petri dishes. All speculation, all his opinion. We can't know their motives, whether it's scientific experiment or a way of preparing new planets for colonization or a long-time ongoing business of seeding life in the universe. Professor Chang indicates that if we think about it in our human terms, the apparent extraterrestrial programmers were most probably working on one big code consisting of several projects. The projects should have produced various life forms for various planets. They've been also trying various solutions. They wrote the big code and executed it. They didn't like some of the functions, so they changed them and added a new one. Executed again with some improvements, and they tried again and again. Now, he has no way of knowing this. See, this is where these scientists are trying to mix their opinions in with scientific proof that there is junk DNA. And you can't mix the two. We don't care what their opinion is. We want the science. Well, the science says we have junk DNA, what they call junk DNA. We know what this is. This is the Nephilim gene. Yes, it's a hybrid gene. It's foreign. It's alien to our original structure. We knew that from the last program, going through the whole thing of this alien DNA through our structure. His researchers conclude that the apparent extraterrestrial programmers may have been ordered to cut all their idealistic plans for the future when they concentrated on the quote-unquote Earth Project. So now it's almost like he's been talking to them, and they say, yeah, this is our Earth Project, yeah, and we're just going to leave the rest behind and concentrate on the Earth Project. What is he? Go to dinner with them and have this discussion? No, man, this is speculation. And he's trying to present it as science. He says it's very likely an apparent rush. The extraterrestrial programmers may have cut drastically in one big code and delivered basic program intended for Earth. Professor Chang is only one of many scientists and other researchers who have discovered extraterrestrial origins to humans. It's not origins. This is just an extraterrestrial gene, this Nephilim gene. Him and his colleagues show that apparent extraterrestrial programming gaps in DNA sequencing precipitated by a hypothesized rush to create human life on Earth presented mankind with an illogical mass of cells that we know as cancer. Complete speculation. No scientific proof of that at all. He also says that we see in our DNA is a program consisting of two versions. Now listen to this. A big code and a basic code. Dr. Chang then affirms the first fact is the complete program was positively not written on Earth. He said that this is now a verified fact. The second fact is the genes by themselves are not enough to explain evolution. There must be something more in the game. So he admits right here the very thing that we have proof of in the Bible itself, starting from Genesis 6. And he admits it right there. Let me tell you again what he